Hi everybody and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be taking you through the process that I follow to acclimate a new houseplant when I bring it into my home. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, for a few reasons. First of all, moving house is stressful. I know, I've done it recently. Now, plants can also suffer stress and do suffer stress. When you take a plant out of the environment that it is used to, it goes into a little bit of a shock. It may slow down its growth, goes into a bit of a protector mode, as I like to call it. You may not see growth for a couple of months, but we can minimize the stress that our plants have and help them acclimate to our house using best practice methods. So I'm going to be going through the method that I follow, which is close to best practice. Now, I'm the first to admit I have a lot of house plants. In my last place, there was nowhere I could do the quarantine step because the whole house was just full of plants. And you may be in the situation too. But quarantining our plant, which we will talk about later, is important. And we're going to be able to do quarantine this time. So we want to minimize the stress on the plant as we bring it into our home and set it up for success. So if that sounds like something you're after, keep watching. Now, first of all, I do want to tell you about this plant. This plant is a Hoya compacta. It's also known by other names. Most commonly, it's known as the Indian rope plant. And it's just a delight. I've never had this plant in my collection, but I've been aware of it for a long time, and I know it's a staple in a lot of people's Hoya collections. It's just gnarly. It's a draping vine. It likes bright filtered light, and with all my other Hoyas, I've had a lot of success growing them on the eastern side of my home where it gets morning light. In my last house, I kept my Hoyas on the laundry windowsill and they loved it. So I'm actually going to be keeping this Hoya in the laundry on the eastern side of the house. So hopefully it will do just as well in just as similar conditions. Now, depending on where you are in the world, bright, filtered light, well, that's a very vague term. It could mean something completely different in your environment. You'll have to experiment, but I feel that the Hoyas probably like to be on the higher side of the light, of the indirect light. So if you can put it in a north-facing window, if you're in the southern hemisphere, or if you can put it in a south-facing window, if you're in the northern hemisphere, maybe with a bit of a sheer curtain between it and the nastiest of the heat. Again, it's really going to depend on where you are in the world. But if you can give it a little bit of that brighter indirect light, then I think it's going to do really well. You'll know if you've gone too far, if the leaves start to get whitish, yellow, dry scorch marks on them. And trust me, I've done that a couple times as I like to push the light levels. But I'm so excited to have this now in my collection, finally, after many years of admiring it from afar. It is the green version. There is a variegated version out there. I'm also aware of that. A bit rarer. I don't care. It's a beautiful new Hoya. I love Hoyas. Who wouldn't love Hoyas? And I'm so happy to have this in my collection. First thing I did when I bought this new plant in was I gave it an inspection and I treated it for bugs. So let's have a look at it now as it was 2 weeks ago. How did I treat it for bugs? I used isopropyl alcohol 70% and I gave the plant a really good spray. That'll clean up any mealybugs or any thrips, or if any spiders are still hanging in there, which there was a bit of a spider web on this one. Spiders don't like this. If you spray this anywhere in your face, you'll understand why the reaction. Please do not spray this in your face. That is bad advice, terrible advice. Sharon, shut up. Do not spray this in your face. This has got a very, very strong smell. Anyway, bugs don't like it. So they go disappearing pretty quick. But it should have taken care of the vast majority of bugs it may have come with when we brought the plant into the home. That is always the first thing I do. I do that step religiously. The moment it gets home, it gets treated. How you tend to spray for bugs using whatever products you have available, that is entirely up to you. Something is better than nothing. Even a good spray with water, like a good jet spray, if the leaves of the plant are nice and succulent like this, then you can give it a good spray and you'll knock off a lot of the bugs that may be sitting and sitting within the plant. The second thing we want to do now, after we've sprayed it for bugs, is to give it a welcome home cocktail. Now, whether I do this step or not really depends on what the soil looks like. If I suspect that plant has been sitting there for some time without any fertiliser, or if I can't see any slow release fertiliser granules, I'll tend to do this step. And what I do is I usually give a quarter dose of all-purpose fertiliser. And with a plant like a Hoya, that's a green plant that we've bought for foliage, I use foliage focus. And I'll use 1/4 strength. I don't want to put a lot of fertiliser in there. I only want to give it a little bit of a nibble, but it's a little bit of a kickstarter. We're going to feed it again in a couple of weeks. Once it's had a chance to settle in a little bit, we'll feed it again in a few weeks. And you want to do that only really if you're seeing active growth. And we're seeing active growth on here. We've got an active vine with new leaves coming in just here. Now, if you're not sure whether the plant has any new growth on it, that's fine. Skip this step. Give it a water if it needs it. With a Hoya, you want to test probably whether the soil is completely dry. Once the soil is completely dry, give a good douse of water and make sure that you get a lot of water. Make sure it runs all the way through the existing soil, but I like to give my plant a little bit of a welcome cocktail in most circumstances, because in my area, what tends to happen is when you buy them from a nursery, they haven't been fed. You'd be lucky if they'd been watered. I guess it depends on where you get it from. If you get it from a hardware store or a supermarket, they don't water them. If you get it from a nursery or a garden centre, they probably have been watered. Whether they've been fertilised, probably not. They may have some slow release fertiliser sitting within them, but in my opinion, it's probably gone way of the bye-bye. Anyway, a quarter dose of an all-purpose fertiliser like this is not going to hurt your plant. It's only really going to give it some benefit. So that's what I do. Welcome home cocktail. And it's a good chance for you to make a cocktail and have a little drink with it, if you wish, if you're into that. Keep going, Sharon. So what does quarantine mean? To quarantine a plant means to separate it away from all your other house plants, to make sure that any bugs that are still here do not migrate their way from your new plant to the rest of your plant collection. So you want to keep this plant isolated. And after a period of isolation, I would say 2 weeks is plenty of time. Once we've done that, we want to move the plant to the location where it's going to live. So why don't we take a look at Sharon 2 weeks ago and see where the plant is going to live, and it's going to go through its quarantine step at the same time. What we want to do is quarantine. This part's really, really important. That way, if you've got other plants, you're not introducing bugs into your collection. Although the larger your collection gets, the more difficult it is to find somewhere to quarantine. But we're lucky right now, because in this room there are no plants, not yet. This will go here for 2 reasons, both for quarantine purposes, but this is where I want this plant to live. There is a beautiful east morning sun that will come in first thing in the morning, and it flushes this entire laundry with light. And this plant is just going to love it. So I've got to put her on a saucer. And now for 2 weeks, we just give her a bit of water when she needs it. So it's been now a couple of weeks since I've had this Hoya down in the laundry acclimating, and now it's time to do the next step, which is entirely optional to you. You've really got 2 options at this point. You can leave things lie. If you're happy with the pot and you're happy with the mix that it's in, you don't need to do anything. Just let it go and allow it to grow. I myself, not really a fan of the potting mix that it's in. The potting mix really is broken down, and I really want to get this into my favoured mix. It's had 2 weeks to acclimate to the environment downstairs. Now we can repot. Alright, now the very first thing I'm going to want to do is sterilise the tools and the things that I'm going to use. Isopropyl alcohol, 70%. I use this to sterilise, and I also used the same stuff to treat this plant when it first came home, if you recall. I'm most likely going to use these two instruments, so I'm just going to put them on here and give them a bit of a spray. And then I'm going to just give it a little wipe over. And we do this to make sure that we're not transferring any nasties over to our plant. And we have a nice clean surface to work on. So now, of course, because I shouldn't have done this, but I watered this plant late last night, very late last night. So its substrate right now is very, very wet. But that's okay. We're still going to take the plant out of its pot. And now we're going to have a look at the roots to start off with. It's the first chance I've had to inspect the roots. Yeah, this media is very broken down. Like that is, yeah. We've got some old slow release fertilizer granules in there. Well, that's okay. And I'm essentially just going to knock off the majority of this old dirt stuff. And of course it's wet. I could go wash this, and I will do that actually once I'm finished, but we're just going to tease out all this old media. At the same time, what I do want to do is to probably clean up a little bit of these old spider webs, and just keeping in mind that any creepy crawlies come out, I am likely to hit the ceiling, and who knows where this video goes after that. So we had quite a little bit of spider web around here, and this actually might be a bit easier to do. Oh, there's dead spider in there. Okay, yuck. And this might be easier to do under the tap, but this is a plant that it's really hard to get into all of the leaves. Have a look how curly they get. It's one of the most amazing features of this plant, really. Anyway, we'll try to tease out a little bit more of the root ball, and then I might go wash the rest of it in the sink, and we will come back with a new plant that is ready to pot up. And for this section of the video, you're going to have voiceover, Sharon, from editing, because for some reason this portion of the video recorded zero sound. Just like me to have some sound issues. But let's see what we're doing here. We're inspecting the root ball, and what I'm talking about is, doesn't this plant look a lot cleaner? And what I'm going to be doing here is using some hydrogen peroxide 3%. Now this is going to be really, really good for getting rid of any nasties that might be in the root ball. And there we go, just as predicted. Now I'll probably just do a little bit of the base of the plant as well. Now what I'm listening for is a bit of a fizz. I want to be able to have a fizz. And the fizz is important because it actually tells you that the hydrogen peroxide is working correctly. If you're not hearing a fizz, then it's essentially turned to an inactive compound. So, oh, fingers. As I'm giving it a listen, so I want to be able to hear the fizz. I can hear that fizz without a drama. And now we're actually going to get ready to pot. Now what I've chosen to do is to downsize the size of the pot, because as you can see there, I've got plenty of room around this pot for the root ball. I think that the pot it came in was a bit too large for this size root ball. And if I have a rule, and I always have a rule, we always pot for the size of the roots, not the size of the plant. So I'm going to be using this black plastic pot, and then I've got the white pot as a cover. And now I'm using my standard houseplant soil mix to backfill and to repot this plant. The potting mix that I use is actually a soilless potting mix, and I will put a link up in the corner so you can see what potting mix that I use. I use this for almost all my houseplants. The other thing I'm going to highlight is these tools that I use. Those tools are fantastic. They really are. They just help me really get in there, keep my fingers clean, kind of. But if you like to do a little bit of precision work, as I do, I like to be quite fussy about where I'm pressing in the media. These tools are just fantastic. They're just so wonderful. Tap, 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 tap. And I'm just speeding this up a little bit because all essentially I'm doing is backfilling. and tapping and doing more backfilling and being really fussy, really, really fussy. Goodness knows what I was talking about. But what I was talking about here is the last step. The last step is to give it another feed because it's been a couple of weeks since I gave it its welcome cocktail. And here I'm actually talking about the same strength dose that we talked about last time. So it's the quarter strength of Foliage Focus. Now this is available on the website. I will put a link in the description. And here we're just giving it a nice all over water with the Foliage Focus in it. Of course, it's fertilised water all over the foliage, all through the media, and allow it to drain out. I'm quite happy to use as much as I want here. I'll use a little bit extra, let it soak in, and it will be very, very happy plant. And we're done. I hope you enjoyed that video. I certainly enjoyed making it, where we have acclimated a new baby into our collection. Oh, do remember, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you see value in it, give it a share. Subscribe to the channel. I would really, really love it if you did. Join our community of plant parents. It really, really, really helps the channel. Do you have this plant in your collection? I would love to know if you do and what your experience is with it. So mention it in the comments if you have this plant. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.